Are we on?
It's on.
We're on. All right. Hey, this is your long lost panda in chief, honorary panda in chief. I don't know
Is
if
that
you
what they
know the
call you?
panda story. You know the panda?
Oh, I
Okay,
don't.
the panda story. All right, you're just gonna have to accept it for
Yep.
now.
All right.
This is my friend coworker Alvin, and we talk back and forth in passing a lot at work, and we laugh a lot, and he learned about my history with cults, I guess, for lack of a better term, and he wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, I've I think you kind of mentioned it in passing that like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, I grew up in a cult,
Mm-hmm.
and that just struck me as something I really wanted to talk to you about. You know,
Yeah.
it's definitely not something you come across every day.
Yeah.
It feels like those people that grew up in that kind of environment are a less inclined to bring it up,
Mm-hmm.
and b just not as common, especially the farther we get into history. With I think with few exceptions, it's harder and harder to develop and maintain like a cult like following.
Mm-hmm.
But if you search around, there's still those things developing. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I know. We talked about it earlier. So I've seen your channel on YouTube, and
Mm-hmm.
then I've seen some other things, some context clues, and I can see that you're a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
You're a faith follower. Um, but being in your early life, you said it was like a Christian church, but it was definitely leaning more conservative. Like, what was the difference basically, like with what you were growing up in and what you're following now?
Well, what I was raised, and I want to be very respectful of the people who may be in this church who also watch this channel. I know there are some, and I also want to be respectful of my father, who is still in the congregation, and I want to be respectful toward, frankly, many of my friends who are still in the church. So this is from my perspective only, and I think my friends definitely know why I'm not in the church anymore. They know exactly why. And I will say I have no. I love my friends in this the Adventist Church. The Seventh Day Adventist Church is what it is. And the difference with the Seventh Day Adventist Church is they hold to the fourth commandment, which is uh, honor the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it you should do no labor, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor the ox, nor the ass, nor the stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord created the heavens and the earth, the sea, and within all them is. Bless this rest. Bless the Sabbath day and hallowed it. And
I
I
feel
think
like he didn't get all of that on a stone
uh,
tablet.
that's weird. That's a good question. That is a lot of writing, and I didn't recite it perfectly, but to the point that I did have to memorize the fourth commandment. I did not have to memorize the other commandments
Yeah.
as a child, which is interesting to me. So all this to say that it is a Christian church. They do believe in salvation through faith by grace through the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. So they believe in all that, and but beyond that, there are some differences.
Hmm.
Uh, and let me just say, cult. I think we were talking about this a minute ago. Where cult, I don't think cult is necessarily a pejorative term. I think cult is. I think we all seek cult. Cult is the root word of culture. It just implies a group that adheres to a certain set of standards and a certain set of beliefs and a certain set of norms. And I think we all, not only do we desire that, but we actually need that.
Yeah, and it's got a dirty connotation, but you could look at any religion, any group of
Yep.
people that have, yeah, just strong beliefs in a
Yeah.
combined culture. Yeah.
Hmm. So I won't. So when I say okay, I use it. I please forgive me, those of you who are still in the Seventh Day Adventist Church and love it and see it as God's chosen people, because they do.
Hmm.
SDAs, we'll call them SDAs for short. They do believe that not only Christians, but specifically that denomination are God's chosen people. And so that's a little bit more of the negative connotation of cult, I think, um, from my perspective. But just to give you an idea of what it was like growing up, I think that was the original part of your question. Um, it was largely defined by what we couldn't do.
Yeah.
Because in keeping the seventh day holy, which I believe is the Sabbath day, I actually do believe it's right there in black and white in the fourth commandment in Exodus 20. Uh, but keeping it holy meant doing not your own pleasure on the Sabbath day. I believe that's in the book of Isaiah. And so that means no commerce on the Sabbath day. And in fact, it's not so different. And honestly, it's not so different from the way a lot of people who go to church on Sunday recognize Sunday as, quote, the Lord's day, if not the Sabbath per se, but they call it the Sabbath. There was no there's no work on the seventh day, or excuse me, on the Sabbath day, which was common between Sunday keepers, what we call Sunday keepers, and Sabbath keepers. No work, no commerce, so no buying, selling, any of that stuff. Um, and from there, there's a little bit of divergence. Like I was not allowed to go swimming on Saturday. We could wade up to our knees or so. It was always a little bit hazy as to what was allowed, but swimming was definitely not allowed because it was definitely our own pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
What we were allowed to do was nap. We were allowed to nap. Hey, frankly, that's a pretty holy
It's a good
activity as far
Sunday
as
day.
yeah, absolutely. What could be more restful than resting?
Yeah.
Okay, just as the Lord rested on the seventh day in the book of Genesis from all his creation. So I have no problem with that, honestly. Napping on the Sabbath day, that's perfect. But that was about the holiest thing we could do, and it was a little bit onerous for me as a child because we couldn't do anything fun. That's the way I saw it. But in practice, it meant a little bit more than that. It was a day of connection with fellow churchgoers and
Mm-hmm.
family and stuff like that. As a perpetually hungry and very poor child, church potlucks were a boon for me. It was a chance to connect with my friends who went to the church school that I went to, and get a lot of good food that I would otherwise not have any access to. One of my fondest memories is Frito pie. I don't know if you've ever had
Of
Frito pie.
course.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
every tailgate.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay. All right, so we're on the same page there. You're from Florida, Texas,
Mm-hmm.
so similar, although not completely overlapping, dynamic,
Yeah.
demographic. Okay. So anyway, so I don't know if that gives you a little bit of flavor. There's obviously a lot that I'm skipping over and missing, but as a child, it was a little bit restrictive, very conservative. Obviously, no dancing, no drinking, no smoking, no caffeine.
Mm-hmm.
It was a no, 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 no. And, that's fine. We are defined by what we don't do, not just what we do, but it wasn't a whole lot of clarity in my upbringing about what we do, what we stand for, okay, so that's not necessarily part of the denomination, but that's the flavor that I inherited in my childhood. So that's my upbringing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And your question was, now, how does that compare to where I am now?
Yeah, like in faith and things like that.
Yeah. So right now, been through a lot. I've been very inconsistent. I view myself, I inherited a Christian heritage. I think it's truly a Christian heritage. There were some caveats to that, and I do view it as harmful caveats. But overall, on balance, it was good. It provided me stability in my childhood. But when I got older, I outgrew that. Now, when I was in college, for various reasons, I despaired of myself ever being the kind of person that I ever wanted to be. It had mostly to do with how I was treating girls at the time. I just was like, man, I'm very selfish, and it drove me to despair. And I was like, well, Christians are kind of boring, but at least they're good people. And so that's when I came across, and I went back to the Adventist church because that's what I knew.
Yeah.
I eventually left the Adventist church once I realized after I was married in my 30s that it supports abortion. And so I left the Adventist church, and since then I've bounced around. I've been bouncing around, Alvin, back and forth over the years many times, from place to place, mostly out of church, honestly, for the last 20 some years, mostly out of church. I'm not proud of that. It is what it is. But in the last few years, deployments exception, I have been in church for the better part of the last, I would say, 3, 4 years. And it's it's salvation by faith in Jesus alone. God does all the work. My work is to believe. And how do you explain that? I don't know. Um, it goes pretty deep, but I will say that for me, being a Christian is I accept that Jesus already did all the work, and somehow He chose me from the beginning of time to to be in this place, to be a believer, to be a child of God. I don't understand it, but somehow it's true. And so nothing I can do can ever make me not a child of God.
Hmm.
And contrary to what one might expect, that does not give me license to do whatever I want to do. Instead, it fills me with gratitude in my best moments and makes me want to be better because I am, frankly, a prince. Strange, right? A prince. I'm a prince. So, so that's where I am now.
Yeah, I mean, and you talked about bouncing around
Mm,
in and out of church. I think if you looked at, the populace, you'd find it rare, to have somebody that is devout in
mm-hmm,
whatever, religion. I mean, I'm definitely not as practicing of a Catholic that I was.
mm-hmm,
But I mean, there was a time in high school I wanted to either be a monk, like a Franciscan brother,
mm.
or even go to the priesthood. And I am,
Did not know that.
yeah, and
So I feel like I should be interviewing you.
and I'm far from that aspect of my life.
Yeah.
I've had my challenges of faith and
Mm,
stuff like that, but I think that's something that is worth talking about. I mean, I think obviously you have your brother on your channel a lot and you talk
mm,
about him, but having challenges of faith, it makes or breaks people,
mm,
in religion.
mm-hmm,
Whatever it is, but when you have one of those difficult moments, you think like, why me?
mm-hmm,
Why are things happening to me? But then it's up to you to be able to say like, okay, this is supposed to happen.
mm-hmm.
This is a challenge for me. It's not a crisis. And then it's how you react to it, whether it's that, looking into the light of God, looking into the gospel, um, or just rejecting faith entirely. And sometimes it takes people their entire life until their deathbed to be like, okay, now I'm going to repent. And
Yeah.
depending on what you look at too, and how you want to look at the scripture, I mean, you could technically wait. Well, not technically. People do wait until their deathbed to
Mm-hmm,
repent. But it's definitely a lot stronger for people, and you have a lot more mental fortitude.
mm-hmm,
When you can learn how to accept that through your challenges early on.
mm-hmm.
You know.
Yeah, and God saved us not just for the hereafter, but He saved us for here.
Hmm.
Like He saves us, shapes us for better lives here, not just for eternity. And this is, I view this as practice. I'm not the only one to have that perspective. But you're right; these challenges of life are actually challenges to faith, and I know a lot of, at least I know of a lot of, and I know at least more than a few who, for the for uh, with the challenges of life have dropped away and
Yeah.
have become atheists or non-believers or functional non-believers, let's just say, and it's completely understandable. I think it's probably the, in my opinion, the most common reason why people stop believing is just because life becomes too challenging. Not that it's so busy, that's one reason. Not that we get tied up in life's fun and challenging aspects and the thrill of chasing goals and dreams. But I think more more than I can more than I can say is probably those challenges. I think just color our view of the world and say, if there's a God, why did He allow this?
Right.
Yeah, you mentioned some. Not to turn the tables on you,
No.
but you mentioned some challenges of faith. Is that true in your life, or you just bring it
I
up?
mean, I've had death of family.
Mm-hmm.
I've had a divorce. I've had a lot of challenging things happen, and I'm only 25. Uh,
Divorce for you personally?
mhm. Yeah, yeah,
I did not know that.
yeah. So, yeah, I've definitely had a lot of, and in that relationship, there was definitely a conflict of religion.
Mm,
I would not say that that was the reason we got
mhm,
divorced. But again, coming out of high school, I was very devout in
mm,
my faith. And I kind of, even I would say even to this day, I would say that I caved early in a relationship
mhm,
when it came to religion,
mhm,
um, just because it was easier in the present, with my spouse,
mhm.
to just say, okay, we'll do it your way.
What do you mean cave? Like, what was her way?
Did not, practice faith,
Okay.
was against it
Mm,
actually in some aspects.
mhm,
Had some strong beliefs, didn't believe in baptism and things like that. I have a daughter.
mhm,
So a lot of that was really hard for me. It was hard for my family.
Mm-hmm.
Again, very devout Catholic family, Irish Italian. So like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, so I definitely in the present I caved, and
Mm-hmm.
what I mean is I just said, okay, I won't go to church because it's causing issues. I won't bring up religion because it's causing issues.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it just became a normal part of my life. Up until I'd say recently, the only time I ever even think about my faith is when I'm going through my own struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Not as a daily reminder, not as something like that, but and I just kind of, and talking about it, I kind of look back at my first marriage as kind of why I fell out of that, which isn't an excuse, but it's definitely what drove me into that path.
Mm-hmm. It is interesting, how, because I feel like it was easy for me to just, because I'm divorced also, as you know, it was easy for me to just peel off on all my supposed convictions and just sort of let them fall by the wayside with deployments, with work, with school, with distractions. It just was so easy for me to let that go. And I talked to someone a few days ago who said, I don't need church to make me a better person. This volunteering or whatever is my church. And I said, got it. Church does not church needn't make me a better person. Church can make me a worse person if I get in the wrong congregation, and if I do, if I fall in with the wrong crowd. Church hurt is real, and as a hospital for sinners and not some kind of like a showcase for saints, church is going to attract sick people. That's what it's for. It's like we're literally in a clinic right now where we see sick people and not so sick people, let's be real, all the time. And it would be shocking if we didn't see sick people here.
Right.
We would wonder what we're doing. And in fact, sometimes we feel that way if we don't we're not happy to see sick people, but we feel like our purpose is being served. And at church, if there were no sick people there, we would wonder what it was for.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up like you said you had somebody that you were talking about with volunteering as their
Mm-hmm.
church and things.
Mm-hmm.
It's so we're both in the army, and the army has the H2F,
Mm-hmm.
holistic health and fitness, which
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you've read into it much, but it has the 5 pillars. One of them being spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
If you read the doctrine from the army on that, it talks about faith or just something that gives you a higher sense of purpose,
Mm-hmm.
outside of you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, faith can be, or spirituality and faith can easily be church, religion, volunteer work, philanthropism, just helping other people,
Mm-hmm.
and then just finding that drive to be something better than you. A lot of people find that in God, right? Because they can look towards Jesus and what He did and try to do it onto others is what He would do, things like that, or through daily prayer. But it's interesting. I definitely have found a sense of faith in being in the army and just like helping people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there I get some of the same internal feelings that I used to get when I was very big into my faith that I get when I help people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to talk about that.
Yeah, Jesus said, even as you've done it unto the one of the least of these, my brethren, you've done it unto me. So when we reach out, a helping hand and service to our fellow human beings, Jesus said we're doing that actually to Him. And He said, if you give even a cup of water to one of these small children in my name, you're doing it to me. And so there's a very real sense. In fact, the truth is we are serving God, we're serving Jesus when we help our fellow human beings. That's why it feels good. Even for, I would say, even for atheists, God put that need in our heart, in our soul, whatever you want to call it, to serve other people and to really, I suppose, just let His Spirit flow through us. And I say, yes, we can do that even as atheists. God's Spirit can still flow through us. I know atheists for whom I'm convinced God is using them for His purposes on a daily basis. I'm convinced. So you don't have to be a Christian for God to use you, in my opinion. That may sound heretical to some people, but that's what I see around me. I'm in contact with some atheists who I think are really doing the Lord's work. In the pro-life arena in particular is what I'm talking about, and I've
Mm-hmm.
told them so. And I don't know how they feel about it, but helping people is a real source of meaning because I think it connects us to our maker, the creator of the universe.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I don't know where where does this leave us
I,
here? We didn't really have. You had some questions
no, I
planned,
think it
or
started out as well. I didn't have any background
yeah,
to your original church that you were part of.
yeah. And we don't talk like honestly. Most of what we talk about is superficial stuff in the
Yeah,
hallway,
smoking, joking.
laughing. We're not actually smoking in the clinic, just in case anybody was concerned about that. It's a turn of phrase. But like just this afternoon, I almost threw up. I was laughing so hard. It was after hours. But man, it's such a great group of people
Yeah,
here that we get to hang around with and do our jobs with and occasionally save lives. I think you would agree we occasionally save lives or we
yep.
occasionally make them better, more salvageable. It's pretty cool to have this kind of camaraderie. And I didn't know that you had a child.
Yeah, yeah. I have a 5-year-old daughter.
Did not know it. So that all I have to say is that doesn't often come up in passing, you know?
No, yeah, and that's the other interesting thing. Yeah, you can say like a lot of our conversations are superficial
Mm-hmm.
around here, um, but we're also very early on into
Yeah.
our
Mm-hmm.
relationships. I think I would say for the most part, knowing each other for 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
it's still a professional. Now we're starting to get into the realms of more on a personal relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, yeah. So I have a daughter. I used to want to be a priest.
Mm-hmm. This
There's
is
a
all news to
there's a
me.
lot,
This is
right?
all news to me.
Yeah, I mean everybody's their own can of worms.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a lot of these things will come up more
Mm-hmm.
and more.
Mm-hmm.
The longer we have a company with each other,
Mm-hmm.
especially outside of business hours. It's hard to talk about religion in uniform. I used to have leadership. He used to say there's three things you don't talk about in uniform. It's religion, sports, and politics. These are the three things that can typically get a rise out of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Because not everybody can have a conversation
Mm-hmm.
on differing viewpoints. But yeah, I mean, the more time we spend together as colleagues and things like that, it's just gonna open up, and I think that goes along with everybody here. There are people are so complex. We're the most complex beings, in the universe,
Yeah.
and you can't come to know somebody or know the little nuances to somebody in just 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully by the end of here, I mean you'll know my social security number, my credit card
I have
information.
access to it if I want to look it
Yeah,
up.
I got yours too. Don't worry.
Dang it.
So yeah, I mean I look forward to getting to know you a lot more, John. But I do think it's interesting, how it kind of started as talking about your faith and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of grew into my faith.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a little bit of a calling interlinking,
Mm-hmm.
to bring two people together to talk more about faith.
Mm-hmm.
There's some other people here I've talked to about faith and common things and growing up and everything like that. Um, but it hasn't gone past more than the I used to or this is who I was. I haven't gotten into the why or even like the what I want to be, because there are definitely big parts of me, especially when I do end up praying, the few times a year I do, that I do feel a sense of faith and a sense of calling to it. And then I just kind of leave it at that and I don't grow with it. But maybe this is a reason to start going back to church and start at least believing back in the scripture
You
and
know, I
things like
haven't been
that.
to church since I've been here.
It's hard for me. It's hard. They don't have a Catholic priest here,
Oh, I didn't
so
realize that.
I have to go off post, and
Mm-hmm.
right now we can't do off post
Mm-hmm.
trips.
So far, it's
It's an excuse. I haven't even tried. I didn't even try when they had it.
I could listen for those of you who are my fellow churchgoers. I have not even watched our service online, and there's no excuse for that. It is that okay? There are reasons, but there are no excuses.
Right.
There are reasons, but there are no excuses, and I won't even bother. But it feels like a completely different realm, and I appreciate you inviting me to this conversation because in a way it's tying two of my worlds together. My deployed world, which seems so far distant from everybody else back home, and I struggle to juxtapose. Every time I deploy, it is very difficult to commit myself fully to this world and also to remember that I have a whole world back home, besides, of course, my daughters. But even that is sometimes very hard. In fact, what that is historically, after the divorce, my biggest fear is that I would neglect my daughters. Like I would somehow go off and start living my life and neglect my daughters. That is terrifying. I mean, I just get this feeling in the pit of my stomach as I even speak that, because there's nothing more important to me than my daughters. You know, God Himself, I got it, but corporeally on this earth, my daughters are where it's at. Like to me, that's what marriage is oriented around. No matter what else happens, they are the most important people, most important priorities that I can have in this lifetime besides God Himself, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think with that fear, I mean, I have that fear as well.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter's very young, so
Mm-hmm.
she doesn't fully grasp,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. She asked me, "Am I still living in that trailer?"
Mm-hmm.
Because when we video talk, I'm just in a little box
Yeah.
in my room. She draws me pictures. Like she sent me a picture recently of daddy overseas, and it's me on a boat, in the
Mm-hmm.
water.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't fully grasp what this is. And I know it's hard for her, her being so young, because when I call her, she'll mention like, why has it been so long, or
Mm-hmm.
why is it light out there, and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And it's hard. It's very hard for me to try to keep my composure when those questions are being
Mm-hmm.
asked, because I know she's hurt. Um, Not only from the divorce, because she was separated from me and mom. Like
Mm-hmm.
that separation happened early on in her childhood, about 3, 4 years old. But now I'm on another time schedule. I'm in another part of the world. I'm in a dangerous part of the world, and she doesn't grasp any of that. Luckily, I have a daughter that is very, very loving, and lights up the room whenever I'm on the call with her. Um, but in my heart, I know that if I'm trying, she will understand that. My father had a divorce. He has 5 kids, two of which are from his first marriage. Unfortunately, his first wife, did a lot of damage to the relationship with him and his kids, but he never let that get in the way of anything. So he would still do all of his calls every week. He's got an amplitude of combat deployments as well. He was in the service, and over that, he still wrote letters, still did calls when he could. Um, and I know because he's talked to me about it, like early on in their childhood, in like middle school, high school, they kind of resented my dad. Um, but once they got older, they saw all the effort that was actually put in. They looked back and said, like, wow, he did try. He tried way more than my friend's dad, and things like that. And that's what's really important, is to be able for them to be able to make the decision of, he tried. He's trying to be a part of my life. My father loves me. That's in turn what's most important. It's gonna ebb and flow, and we're not gonna win every battle. I know we had another colleague. She was on the phone, and her son said, "You're the worst mom ever," for being gone,
Yeah.
right? And that's a battle you can't win, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because to them, they're 100% right. You chose to join the army, you chose to
I
leave.
was there. Was I there? I remember I was like, oh dang.
Yeah, that's a hard pill to
Yeah.
swallow,
Yeah. But he sandwiched that with like, I feel, and then right now. I feel you're the worst mother right now.
Yep.
You just sandwich it. You're like, okay, I
Yeah,
got it. That's how you feel.
and then kids are brutally honest sometimes. But other relationships too. Like I have a fiance back home, and she's struggling a lot with this,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm struggling the most because that's the first time I've ever felt solely connected to a person outside of my
Mm-hmm.
daughter. Um, and then being separated like this, and this was my choice. I volunteered for this
Mm-hmm.
deployment. Um, and so we're having our own struggles and battles with that. And luckily, I have somebody who is, you know, devout to me and what I'm doing, and they know I wanted to do this for a purpose. And that's been the biggest benefit to me, is just having somebody that wants to support me. And even though we're not young in a relationship, but we're both young, we're
Mm-hmm.
about the same age. Um, they have never said or shown anything that would say like, I hate you for doing this. Where they might be really good actors, but I feel totally safe with my partner, and that she fully supports me and is able to help me when I'm over here.
That means so much. Like to have that connection across this 5,000 mile or so expanse. I
Yeah,
don't even know
you
how
get
far it is.
what, 3 hours of FaceTime
Yep.
on a good day.
maybe
That's
on
and
a
that's
day.
morning
That's
and night, yeah, and that's every three
yeah.
to 4 days with good connection, God
I
willing.
haven't seen my daughter's faces since I left.
Yeah.
I haven't We haven't done FaceTime. It's all been telephone, just old school. I say old school. It's not old school. It's a cell phone, telephone. But yeah, three times a week. And that is the hardest part of being gone, and that is the reason why I intend to retire is my daughters, and that's
Yeah.
why I I told the army that I would, if they didn't move me nearer to them, that I would quit and move myself. And they capitulated, thankfully, because I would love to retire from the army. I like the army a lot. I will miss the army when I'm gone, but I also can't be gone soon enough because there's so much time that I can't catch up. I grant I can't catch up the time lost. They've been apart from me more than they've been with me,
Yeah.
and but I can make the most of the time that I have left. And to your point about the effort of your dad and other dads who are separated or divorced, one of my good friends talks about how she has four siblings as well. Her parents divorced when I think she was 12 or around early teenage years. It was very impactful for her. She's the oldest, and it somehow impacted her younger siblings even more than it did her because she thinks, and I think there's something to this. Well, I think it probably affects a certain age group a little bit more, but they don't have that familiarity with their father to draw from. They don't have that bank of memories to draw from.
Hmm.
There's nothing you do about that if they're like, it is what it is, right? But I think what she said stuck with me, and it was the frequent conversations. It wasn't the big grand gestures. It wasn't the trips. Her dad did a lot of trips. He tried to put a lot of effort in, and he loves playing trips. He's a great he, logistician, and like he and planner. Like he does things to the max. And he's awesome. But she said it wasn't that kept them close. It was the daily or near daily chats
Yeah.
and just the constant contact.
The hey, I'm here.
Yes. And she thinks that that is what set her up for success. She is married, she has four children of her own, and uh, and she's doing pretty well. And I would have to agree with that with her characterization. And I also read a quote that said much the same thing. It is just the measure of a human being is the small daily gestures, the small daily actions that no one will ever see. No one may even remember any particular one, but the cumulative effect is incredible.
But yeah, do a good turn daily. I
Yeah.
mean, that's like the ethos of Boy Scouts and things like that. It's
Oh, yeah,
just
you're a Boy Scout.
do a good turn daily,
Hmm.
right? Um,
Like water on a rock, or like the waves on a cliff that just
mhm.
wear it
It just
away
erodes it
over
over
time. Yep.
years and years.
And they
Yep.
shape it. And I think that's the cumulative effect of our actions on our children and those around us, for good and bad. Incidentally, you can ruin a relationship. You can practically ruin a child or another human being that way. Uh, but you can also build them up far greater, and you can build that relationship, I think, over time with daily, because that's where trust comes from. The trust doesn't come through big gestures, because anybody can focus their effort on a big gesture. It does take a lot, it's true. But the daily commitment is the thing that really sets a person apart. And trust is what I think makes relationships function. It's the fuel
Yeah, that
for relationships.
reliability,
Yep. It's the fuel for society. It's the fuel for families and interpersonal friendships, marriages. I think that's where you build the trust is this small daily micro interactions that people can really sense who you are more than some show. I think the big gestures can feel more like a show. Like what are you trying to buy off of me? What are you trying to pay me off as? What's your angle here? But the daily interactions, it's much harder to pin that question on. It has to be authentic.
Well, some things that I apply in my relationship now are things I learned from my grandfather. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he was absolutely like the model of like what it was to be a man, in my opinion. Um, he was hardworking. He's got a crazy life story.
Mm-hmm.
Truck driver, pro bowler, pro dart player, professional skydiver.
Pro dart player.
Yep, did some.
That's a rarity.
I know. Well, we
Mm.
got a few of them in the family.
Okay.
So, no, but he had and then he served in the military. His work ethic was unmatched. He was a master carpenter, a whole lot of things. But some of the things that he would do to my grandmother was weekly. he would buy her flowers.
Mhm.
That's not a, hey, I messed up.
Mhm.
You know, it was just a weekly thing.
And
Um,
that doesn't always work, does it? When you you buy
no,
flowers when you're like,
no.
oh, throw those in the trash.
Yeah, it should,
Maybe. I mean, maybe it works for you.
his ethos was never do it when it's needed. Do
Mhm.
it because they deserve it.
Yeah,
You know,
it's
and
like
it's
when
just a daily act or a weekly act,
you
right?
get it, like you just get it because you value the other person. Do
Hundred,
it
and you
because you
know they
value
like.
them.
I mean, there's
Yeah.
the love language and things like that.
Mhm.
You do the small things that complement your partner's love language.
Mhm.
You know, that's how you build a healthy relationship.
Mhm.
For me, I hate cleaning and I hate doing dishes.
Mhm.
My partner's love language is she likes to clean and likes to have things done around the house.
Perfect.
I come home, if the dishes are in the sink, if I just do them without her asking, that is akin to me buying her, you know, 2 or 3 dozen roses. That's what it feels like, the way she can react to it.
Yeah, and can I just say that as someone long divorced and looking back at how I screwed up, I think just something, a small gesture like that can be incredibly meaningful, especially as applied over time.
Yeah.
It does accumulate, it does multiply. And I think in general, the more I read, the more I think about this, the more I understand that a lot of women really value a man who does housework. It's not the whole thing, but it goes a long way,
Yeah, it
honestly.
shouldn't, not
Yeah,
everything should turn into a honey-do list,
right.
right? There
Yeah.
should just be things that you do together as a team,
Anticipate. Yep.
anticipation, you
Hmm.
know, because they'll do things for you,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
Whether it's like my spouse, she's now out of the military, and or not spouse, my partner, now out of the military. Things that she values in doing for me is she likes cleaning and she likes like making me lunch and things like that. I know it sounds very like traditional housewifey.
Hmm.
But I don't look at it that way.
Hmm.
You know, I'm out making the majority of our household income, and then I cook all of our meals, right? Um, so she does kind of all the majority of the other things, and then I'm there to kind of help pick up the slack, help her when she's tired. One of the things I love doing is I love giving every single night like a foot rub or a back massage. It's like one thing I love doing for her because I know how much she's doing around the house, you know. And you can't say keeping the house clean or walking the dog, doing all the daily errands around the household is not a busy, hard job. Because if it was easy, I would do it here even, you know, and I only have a bunk, you know, and I'm still a messy person.
You know what? But living alone has clarified for me just what part was mine and what part
Yes.
was my ex-wife's and my children's. And I'm like, oh, well, okay. All right. Well, maybe I can be a little humble about that.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think it's interesting how we've gone from the beginning of our conversation to here.
This was predictable and predicted.
Yeah, we did talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
We are just gonna go. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're still
Yeah,
on
how we
time.
doing?
We're
Okay,
still
we
good.
got 20 some
Yeah.
minutes left. Okay.
But yeah, I think that's really key to a healthy relationship. Another thing my father told me was never go to bed angry.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's something I try to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, at a minimum, say I love you, even if you don't mean it at the time. You know,
Say it on faith.
exactly. You can say it knowing that you will mean it
Mm-hmm.
or have meant it, right? Because there are going to be times where you don't mean it at that moment, right?
I don't really know. Like, I know the Bible says, do not let the sun go down on your anger. And I don't know how to interpret that, but I know a lot of people have interpreted that way. And I'm not the guy to give marital advice in that respect, but it sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, I'm a hard to anger
Mm-hmm.
individual
Mm-hmm.
overall.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, you're pretty happy-go-lucky around here.
try to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely look at the glass pretty much full. I mean,
You've probably seen me angry more than I've seen you.
I've seen you upset at your desk a few times. Yeah, or in my office, I've
Yeah.
seen you pretty upset. I do get mad, and I'm kind of like my father. I'm a very long fuse,
Mm-hmm.
but there does come a time where I kind of pop, and then
Mm-hmm.
it takes me a long time to get back. Uh, but at the end of the day, I don't look at anything as so important that I have to sweat over. There's very little things in my life that have affected me outside of my divorce was my biggest challenge
Mm-hmm.
I've ever
It's
faced.
like a death, honestly.
It was
It's
financially,
failure. Yep.
spiritually, like every part of me was, I mean, hit hard. I went through a large bout of depression and
How
things
did
like
it
that.
change you?
Man, I'd say it made me more cautious
Mm.
on a lot of things. I didn't know a lot about my spouse at the time. We were the current We were the epitome of an army relationship.
Mm,
Met in training, got married in training, had a
mm.
baby in training. Right. So I didn't know
That's
my.
kind of impressive, actually. That was fast acting.
It's year long. You
So
know.
I know when your training began,
Yeah.
about 6 years ago.
Yeah. So so I was definitely impatient. My family saw it. They were like, "Hey, why don't you slow down?" All this stuff, but I just didn't want to listen. It's kind of funny when you're 18, you know it all. When you're 21, 18-year-old you is an idiot, but now you know it all. And when you're 24, 21-year-old is an idiot. 18 is even worse, but now you know it all, right? And so that keeps compounding, right? And I've learned I mean, pretty much right during the divorce, I learned, I need to listen to my parents. Not with everything, but when they're saying stuff, they're saying it out of love, and it has a reason on why they're saying it. They have way more experience than I do.
They might be wrong, but they're wrong in the right direction.
Right. They're saying, hey, take a breath, take a look at the bigger picture.
Mm.
And then it definitely changed me in terms of trusting other people, and it changed me in my career. Um, it caused me to learn that when I'm in a difficult time, I dive headfirst into work, and I will do 120-hour weeks without batting an eye because it's easier to be at work than it is to be at home in isolation, um, which isn't healthy. I've achieved burnout a couple of times, to a pretty.
Yesterday you were pretty bleary eyed, I would say.
Yesterday I watched football a little too late in the night. That was all on my fault.
It's not your
I
fault
made a
that
business
we're
decision.
7 hours ahead.
I had 2 hours of sleep, and I just kind of trucked through the day. But then I slept for about 16 hours
Perfect.
after that. I mean,
Yeah.
I was just out. But
You knew you could.
yeah, it's also matured me a lot. I think I'm a little bit more mature in a lot of things than some of my peers. But that's just life experience. I think other people will be more mature in other aspects, but when it comes to family, love life, choosing the right person, I'm a lot more mature. I'm having harder conversations with my partner right now
Have them
that I
now.
never had before.
Yeah. Probably you don't want to screw it up. You're like, hey, I got somebody who wants to be married or
Yep.
wants to be with me. Let's not screw this thing up by asking tough questions and
Yeah, like
scaring them off.
we're early in our relationship. I mean, early, we're about to be 3 years in, and talking about when are we going to have kids? Do we want kids? Okay, yes. Okay, you don't want to have them yet. That's amazing. I don't need another kid right now. So being able to plan that out, being able to talk about, she's very strong with her heritage and loves her last name. So having those conversations about keeping my name or keeping her name, hyphenating. You think maybe those are easy questions on the surface, but they're not. Those are life defining changes that you're having with
Yeah,
people.
decisions come directly from your values.
A
And your
100%.
values are who you are.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not obvious what we value because we don't know who we are, and it takes time and circumstance and a lot of effort to uncover who we are and what we value. And we don't often have to encounter those questions unless we're in a real deep, intimate relationship that involves real give and take, like marriage, like you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's a real stressor on two very young, and I'll say kids, which was like me and my first wife. I was 18, she was 20,
That's
right?
old school. We
Yeah.
haven't seen that since the 1970s or 60s,
Well,
you know?
nowadays too, though, I'm very pro. I want women to have all the same rights, decisions, everything that I do.
Sure.
I don't. I think it's to me. I think it's barbaric to think the man should make all decisions in a household. Um, and oftentimes women are a little bit more successful, especially in education. Like my sister is the most successful person in my family by far. She's a double barred lawyer, New York and LA. She's a partner at her law
Single
firm.
or
She's not. She's not. She has two great kids and a great husband. Um, but I don't really believe in like the patriarchy and things like that because it early on in my first marriage, I realized that may have had those mindsets early, and that caused a lot of headaches because I had my very stout beliefs and things. The way things should happen is the way I say it, and it was very immature of me, and it caused a lot of problems. At the same time, I had a spouse that didn't want to work with me. Whenever I was at a crossroad, there was no give and take.
because guess what? She was immature as well.
Yeah, exactly. We were kids, right? And we didn't know each other. So just going into my new relationship, the one I have right now with my fiance, it's everything is discussed. I've learned how to fight, and I say fight. I've learned how to have
Yeah.
arguments.
Yeah.
It's not a skill that everybody has. Um, Frankly, the way we used to argue at the beginning to now, I mean, there's the honeymoon phases and things like that, but like I pride our relationship in the fact that we're able to talk things out, say pause if one of us needs a break. I mean, we're even doing that now on deployment because being separated like this just automatically comes with challenges and comes with arguments that are going to happen, whether it's because the connection's bad or maybe one of us isn't listening. But being able to say pause, come back to it, talk it out, it's something that it's a skill that I'm glad and thankful for to have developed from my first marriage.
Yeah, you're building more of a foundation now than just trying to get to a particular destination in your
Mm-hmm.
relationship. We're just trying to get to marriage. We're just trying to get to 5 years. That's not a real. That's not a plan.
No.
That's just kind of a wish.
Yep.
And I think what you it sounds to me like what you've discovered is you build a house brick by brick, and you build a relationship the same way
Yeah.
just by these daily interactions and doing work. And doing work most often means just kind of almost negotiation, but also enjoying each other. I would say is that a fair statement?
Oh yeah.
It's hard to do that from here because you
Oh
can't really date your fiance from so many thousand miles away. But I think that's another thing that I wish that I had done is made carve time out every week or every 2 weeks regularly at the very least for just that relationship to honor the other person, just to have fun with the other person, and and recall what it is that we like about each other. Because when we're all about business, when you have a family, it's about business. You're running a business.
yeah.
It's a lot of management. It is a lot of direction and discipline and sort of nose to the grindstone stuff, or you're not gonna make it.
Yeah, and you can develop a new best friend when you have kids,
Yep.
right? Your spouse might not be your best friend anymore.
Yeah,
You know,
that's kind of a weird. That's
my
kind of a
daughter is
weird
my
thing.
best friend.
Yeah,
You
that's
know.
kind of a weird thing. But in some ways, like my daughters, I just cherish the heck out of them. I get a little feeling in my chest when I think about them,
Mhm.
and sometimes if I think too hard, I'll just drop a tear or two just out of nowhere.
Yep.
I was just preparing a card. I just started preparing a card and looking for gifts for one of my daughter's birthdays coming up. And just the very act, anytime I make a card for them or write a letter to them, any depth at all, immediately it just,
Waterworks.
yes, it's like I would be embarrassed, but I can't be. It's just real.
Yep. You
There's,
got to circle the wet stain and be like, "This is where I cried for you." I hope
and
you know.
I don't want to make a big deal of it, because I don't want to embarrass them, but I also just want to be honest about what fatherhood is like. And I think we don't often give due credit to fathers in society, in part because fathers do often run away, in part because we chase them away and cut them out actively. And I don't, this gets into another topic, but I think that fathers are so important to children and to families. Somehow we've lost that idea, and somehow we've mistaken a father's love for anything else. Somehow we've just discounted that. And I love my children deeply. I would give my life for them. And I endeavor to create daily little memories with them. I leave them little video messages every day. I don't think they check them, but it doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? It almost doesn't matter
I'm
now.
telling you, it's the effort.
Yeah.
You know.
Like I'm creating something in me first, and I was the one I was concerned about. I was concerned that I would forget about them or leave them by the wayside because I'm inconsistent. That's a big problem for me. I've ducked in and out of church, not to tie our conversation
Mhm.
together here as we're approaching the end. I've ducked in and out of church, ducked in and out of relationships. This is a big problem for me. And I thought, you know what? If this is a pattern, then I'm going to have to really watch what I do with my daughters. I'm going to have to really pay attention so that they know every day that I care about them. I care about being their father. And I really do want to create these daily memories. And if they choose to like watch these little videos every day, great. But if not, then I'm building in myself the habit of daily attention towards my daughters.
Well, you're also kind of etching out that mindset,
Mm-hmm.
that version of you that you were afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a day where you're going to say, I'm not afraid to be that person
Mm-hmm.
anymore, because I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
Because frankly, right, we kind of project ourselves in negative lights all the time.
Sure.
I'm my own worst critic. I am my own worst enemy.
Well, I have a reason to be.
Right.
I
And
mean, I've got a
whether
pretty
it's
good history
life
of yeah.
experience and
Mm-hmm.
what you've done to others and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, absolutely. You're kind of building that mold of your future self.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you're still a sculptor, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're still the artist. You're still painting your own picture. And there's going to be a moment where you're going to say, this is a totally different me.
Yeah.
I hate that people think they can't grow up anymore. Uh, I've watched my father, my mother have different changes in beliefs, and they're late in life. They're in their 60s.
It's not too late.
It's not too late. No, they still have, 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Especially advent of medicine. I mean, they're going to be trucking
Mm-hmm.
along until
Mm-hmm.
probably until I keel over.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no, but I've seen them have changes in beliefs, and it's interesting that people might say, like, I'm always going to be this person, right? But having dedication and commitment to being something else, I mean, eventually it becomes a habit.
Mm-hmm.
Atomic habits, things like that. Like, you can become someone else.
It's funny you mentioned that because I just mentioned that to a friend of mine, the mother of 4 children, and she read it just recently and really liked
It's a
it.
great book.
Her sister recommended it to her. I recommended it, and I was like, "Well, I've never read it, but
I've heard it's great.
I've heard it's great." She's like,
No, it really is. It's a
"Now
very
I've
good
read it,
read.
and it is great." She says, "Yeah."
Yeah, no,
So,
it is a great. It's a quick read too.
that's what she says,
Yeah.
like 100 something pages.
You can do it in a day or in a weekend, depending on what you got going on. I know you're not busy here at all,
No,
so. But no, it's a great self development tool.
mm-hmm.
Some other great ones out there too, but yeah, um, yeah. Don't ever think. I mean, this is coming from a 25-year-old, right? But don't ever think you can't turn into the person that you want to be, even at whatever stage in life you are. Because I don't ever want you to think that you're not a committed person. That's not a good, healthy mindset to have.
Well, I will say this, that it has been true as often as not in my
Mm-hmm.
lifetime. And I've gone through a lot of different careers. So that's the nice, happy, forward-facing side of my lack of commitment is that I've done a lot of interesting things. The dark side of that is that I don't stick with a lot of
Yeah,
things.
maybe not so committed in every aspect or
Yeah,
most aspects.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so partly why I came to medicine was because I wanted something I could do every day. In aviation, it was great. It was fun. It was a very sort of like an obviously flashy dream job for me as a kid. Like this is all I saw. In reality, it wasn't flying all the time. There was a lot of work on the ground and stuff that I knew about but hadn't really appreciated. And so I came to medicine because it was something I could do every day, and I really crave that daily contact with the purpose of my life and the daily contact with um, the familiarity, the long arc, not the sort of the zigzag that I've taken. And so that is a big way in which I've changed since in the last 10 years or so, including after the divorce, which has been, as you said, a period of immense change in the second half of my life, more than likely, immense change and better late than never. And I would agree with what Alvin said. And if you're watching this and you think you're too old to change, or maybe too young to change, or that what you do on a daily basis doesn't matter, I think that we both agree that you're wrong, and that's good. I don't know how else to frame this. I mean, do you have any concluding thoughts?
Well, let's change together,
Yeah.
right? Maybe let's make a commitment to each other.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start trying to practice my faith a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
I know we have different aspects of
Mm-hmm.
Christianity, but I'm going to say that I'm going to commit myself to faith a little bit more.
I like that. I think male friendships a good component, and maybe female friendships too. But speaking as a male here, I think male friendships include an element of accountability.
Yeah.
I like that you just went directly there. So you're going to practice your faith more. I need to get to church, so I commit to going and just small things, right? Atomic habits, very small little changes that are sustainable. I commit to going to church this weekend. I figured out what the times were. I figured out where it was over the weekend. and this coming weekend, I'm going to go.
Okay.
All right. So just one step at a time. 12-step tradition is one day at a time.
Yep.
And Jesus said, let the day's troubles be enough for the day. Let tomorrow take care of itself. So I commit to that one step. You commit. And what is a tangible step that you will take to make your religion more?
So I'm going to reach out to the chaplain.
Okay.
Definitely try to figure out something for my faith. If
Hmm.
anything, I know there's virtual, not Eucharist. I can't take the
Hmm.
Eucharist unless I'm in church.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, it's the taking the body of Christ
Sure,
thing.
of course.
But I can definitely attend virtual mass
Hmm.
and get the daily prayer and things like that. There are little things that I can do any day.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'll invite you to church with me.
yeah,
I know.
I'll probably go.
I mean, Protestants. I hate the term Protestant because it's somewhat limiting. I say I'm Christian. You know what I mean? I'm Christian.
I'm more of a Christian follower. I do like the some of the things in
Hmm.
Catholicism. I like some of the history, and the way things are done in Mass. I'm also used to it.
Yeah, it's
But
familiar.
I've been to plenty of like all Christian masses and churches and things like that, and I definitely don't have a problem with them. Because at the end of the day, you're following the sacrament and you're
Mhm.
looking towards the Bible and you're looking at the gospel.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, you're kind of still believing in the same exact thing. Just it's the nitpicky stuff like that. Somebody's right, maybe we're all wrong, but at the end of the day, it's not up to us to
Mhm.
figure out that. It's just up to us to find a way forward in faith. So,
Yeah, I like that you brought out that because I think it's important. I see sometimes online some strife between Catholics and Protestants or whatever we want to call them for want of a better term, and it just bothers me a lot. I just don't think that's productive. And here we are, we're friends. In real life, you can be friends with whoever, I'm friends with atheists. I'm sure you're friends with a lot of atheists. Doesn't matter.
yeah, in real life, I don't like this guy. We don't interact.
Dang. But yeah, so anyway, so we're coming up on our hour, and I just want to thank you for staying with us. We didn't know where this conversation was going, so I know you didn't. We thought we were starting off in one direction on cult. I kind of begged off of the cult moniker because I think me calling my upbringing in a cult would do disservice both to my friends and the people who are in much worse cults. And it's true that I do have a history with a fairly infamous cult leader, but we'll save that for now. Um, I don't know. I just want to thank you for joining us. Alvin, if I may say one more thing and then a prayer. Would that be okay?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So one more thing, and then I've been talking about this, and I know that I need to be accountable to go to church, but I also want to watch my mouth around here because I am a talker. I'm a talker. Okay, so we'll get into specific. I'll spare you the specifics on this video, but I think we probably both have a sense of what
Yeah.
that means. Okay, so I'm a talker. I need to watch my mouth, and, and, and I just want to at least put it out there, okay? Because honesty leads to change. Anyway, I'll say a quick prayer, and if you're atheist or offended by it, you can duck out. Thanks for watching. All right, but here we are. All right, God. Thanks for my friend Alvin. We're grateful for this opportunity to just talk, two men together, co-workers, soldiers, um, practitioners of medicine in a land far, far away out in the desert. But really, honestly, not so bad. It feels kind of like a summer camp with the threat of occasional missile attack. But we're grateful for your protection. We're grateful for your presence here. We're grateful that nobody has died under our watch, despite many opportunities. We never know what to expect. And we ask that you bless our patients, our future patients, our previous patients. We ask you put your hand on our staff here. And God, we're well mindful that there are perhaps thousands of people watching this. It's incomprehensible to me. I don't understand it, but you have willed me through my brother Dan an audience, and I just want to be faithful to them. I ask for your hand upon their lives, whatever they're struggling with or going through. We know a lot of them are struggling with diseases, them personally or their family members. And this is such a difficult season for them. I ask that you would put your healing hand, you great physician, uh, author of life, upon their own lives and comfort and heal them, God for the glory of your name, for Jesus Christ's sake. Amen. Thanks, guys. Love y'all.